Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. President-elect Donald Trump is nominating his cabinet, and that's putting North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis under the microscope. How the Republican senator votes for certain nominations could be used as fodder on the campaign trail in 2026 when he's up for re-election. Opposing nominees might earn him points with moderate voters. If he strays too far from Trump, he risks hostility from other Republicans. WRAL state government reporter Paul Specht joins us to explain why some consider Tillis the most vulnerable Republican in the Senate. Paul, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
Paul, Senator Thom Tillis is up for re-election in 2026. You report that his seat is vulnerable in a state where Republicans have fared pretty well in federal elections recently. Why is he vulnerable?
Well, first and foremost, the party in power doesn't typically do well in midterm elections like we'll have in 2026. And the party in power is about to be Republicans. They won the White House, they won the House, they also won the Senate. And so they're about to have all this control to pass, presumably almost any laws that they want, any legislation they want. So Tillis will be tied to that, and Democrats will run in opposition to that in 2026. Now, another reason that all eyes are going to be on Tillis in 2026 is that our Senate race here in North Carolina is expected to be perhaps the closest in the country. Now, not every state has a Senate race in 2026. Their Senate elections are staggered, so they're not all in the same year. Our election is expected to have a narrower margin of victory for whoever it will be than any other state in the country. So the dollars are going to come pouring in, millions and millions of dollars, to run against Tillis, to run against the Democratic candidate. It may turn out to be the most expensive Senate race in American history. So that's all coming here 2 years from now.
And that's because the electorate in North Carolina is pretty evenly split, right?
That's right. This election, we saw Trump carry the state in the presidential race. Democrat Josh Stein won the governor's mansion, and then Democrats won a handful of other what we call Council of State races in sort of the executive branch. And then, Republicans won almost a supermajority in the state legislature. So it's really hard to peg who would win in a statewide race in 2026, but we do know that Tillis will be playing defense.
Now, President-elect Donald Trump is nominating his cabinet, which will need Senate confirmation. This could be dicey for Tillis, right?
That's right. The base will be watching, the base of the Republican Party will be watching to see if he opposes any of Trump's nominees. And if he does, that gives potentially someone the opportunity to challenge Tillis to his right in the Republican primary in 2026. Now, of course, if Tillis goes along with all of Trump's picks, Democrats may be able to capitalize on that. Let's say that Tillis supports Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the health department, right? And Kennedy goes on to create some sort of health emergency, right? And this is all hypothetical. I'm not saying he'll do that. But if he does, Democrats will be able to tie Tillis to that emergency or whatever hypothetical scandal there is. That could be bad for him. There are a couple of other candidates that are also considered controversial in that they're getting pushback from members of both parties. One is former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. She is seen as a defender of Russia, and Tillis is co-chair of the NATO caucus in the Senate. And so he's been outspoken about Ukraine's right to defend itself since Russia invaded in 2022. They may be at odds. Tillis hasn't said how he'll vote yet, but that's one to watch. And then there's former Congressman Matt Gaetz. He's from Florida, and he's Trump's pick to be U.S. Attorney General, and which has caught many people by surprise because Gaetz faces allegations of illicit drug use, of having a role in sex trafficking, of trying to block the authorities from investigating these things. And so we've seen Republicans and Democrats alike push back on him. We'll see if there's a vote. One thing that the Senate could do is, with its new leader, it's not Mitch McConnell, it's now Senator Thune, they could just choose not to bring some of these candidates or nominees up for a vote. We'll see. But if they do vote, that is public record, and we'll see where Tillis lands.
Now, Tillis has worked across the aisle on some key legislation at a time when Congress has been criticized for gridlock. Can he run on that? Can that help his reelection efforts? How has that been received?
Well, the Senate for decades has been a place where its members pride themselves on pragmatism, and Tillis is sort of known for that. He's pushed legislation to protect same-sex marriage rights in the event that a Supreme Court case is overturned someday. He's also tried to work on border deals, but this has not always gone well for him. In fact, when he ran for re-election in 2020, he would be at Trump rallies with then President Trump, and he'd be booed by some members of the audience. And in more recent years, he was censured by the North Carolina Republican Party for his effort to preserve those same-sex marriage rights. So the base is not exactly thrilled with him, but he's won a statewide election twice, and prior to that, he was Speaker of the House back when Republicans took control of the legislature for the first time in over a century. So it's a mixed record. It sort of depends on what you look at. If you look at his legislative record, it is one of the strongest in North Carolina history of any Republican. But some of these more recent things have upset some people in the base.
What are you hearing from Tillis's camp?
Well, we asked to sit down with him to talk about some of these things, and they said he wasn't available. They sent us a statement saying that he was going to do his best to start off strong with the Trump administration, and that Democrats have, thrown a lot of attacks at him in the past, and he's prevailed, and that's what they expect in 2 years as well.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear about who else might be interested in running for Tillis's Senate seat. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL state government reporter Paul Specht about U.S. Senator Thom Tillis. Paul, tell us about how Tillis got to where he is.
Well, he was a state legislator for several years, and then Republicans in the 2010 elections, they took control of the North Carolina General Assembly for the first time in over 100 years. They called it the Republican Revolution, and after they did that, Tillis was elected House Speaker. That's an incredibly powerful job. And so as Speaker, he helped usher in a new era of tax cuts. They cut regulations. And in recent years, North Carolina has become one of the best states in the country for businesses and just overall quality of life. That's something that he ran on in 2014 when he ran against incumbent Democrat Kay Hagan. And he beat her that year, obviously, and then went on to beat Democrat Cal Cunningham in 2020. So he's got a strong record.
You've described Tillis as a pragmatist. He's worked on bipartisan legislation. Where is he on the Republican spectrum? Is he a moderate? Is he in the right wing? Where is he?
What people told us is that if this was 10 years ago, they would say he is squarely within the middle of the Republican Party, just like a solid conservative. But the party has moved to the right over the years. And while Tillis would say he hasn't changed, he's been the same guy for a decade now, with the party moving to the right, that leaves him further on the left. And by no means would anyone accuse him of being a leftist or even a left-leaning Republican. He's not. He's certainly a Republican champion. But in today's environment, where the Republican base values loyalty to Trump, some of his work across the aisle, some of the things he said in the past have rubbed people the wrong way, and they view him more toward the middle.
Now, you mentioned that he was censured by members of his own party, so one might think that's a clear signal he'll face some challengers in the primary. Are there any likely candidates in the Republican Party for this position?
Well, before the election earlier this month, I would have said Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, because he's extremely popular with the Republican base. However, his loss was so large to Democrat Josh Stein that I don't know that he would run again. People would probably try to talk him out of it. He lost by 15 points. So could he beat Tillis in a primary? Maybe. However, Democrats would probably love to run against Mark Robinson again because of the statements he's made about abortion and other things like that. They see him as sort of an easy opponent. There's also Dan Bishop. He ran for Attorney General and lost a much closer race to Democrat Jeff Jackson. And, there's some legislators that are probably thinking about it. But Tillis has been around a long time. And, a lot of the people in Republican politics today have worked with him, have worked for him, have dealt with him. He has a lot of allies. So while someone may challenge him, it would certainly be tough because as an incumbent, that benefits you a lot.
Let's look at the other side of the ticket. Are there any Democrats eyeing this seat? And how might that play out?
Now, that is fascinating because we have Governor Roy Cooper, who's termed out. He can't run for governor again. And so, obviously, with that open seat, Josh Stein, Attorney General Josh Stein, ran and won. Cooper has famously never lost a race in North Carolina. What an incredible stat. Democrats, I'm sure, will knock on his door and say, hey, man, you want to run for Senate in 2026? He has not said whether he will. He hasn't ruled it out either, so he'll be one to watch. There's also Jeff Jackson, the congressman from Charlotte, who just won the Attorney General's race. He's seen as very charismatic. They're a little different than Cooper. Cooper and Jackson are both charismatic people, but in different ways. Cooper is seen as sort of folksy. Jeff Jackson is known for his sort of social media prowess. He's very good at putting out videos and speaking directly to voters and putting them at ease and good at explaining what's happening in Washington. So sort of different strokes there. But those would be two people to watch. And then there's soon-to-be former Congressman, Wiley Nickel. He said he's also exploring a run. He's based here in Raleigh and certainly could, if Cooper doesn't run, people would be looking at him as well.
And how would any of them fare against Tillis or another Republican?
Right. Well, it's expected to be a good year for Democrats in 2026. But, Republican and independent analysts told us it depends on the economy. If the economy's good and Trump gets credit for that, then Democrats might have a harder time. But if there are a bunch of scandals, if people aren't doing as well as they expected to under a Trump presidency, then Democrats may have the edge, especially if Republican enthusiasm for Tillis isn't there. And what's really why that race is so important, Republicans have a 3-seat majority in the Senate right now. There are about 4 races that might be close in 2026. Tillis is expected to be the closest. So Democrats could win back the Senate majority that year, and that's why they're going to look at North Carolina so closely. They're going to put so much money here.
Going to be very interesting to watch. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
That's WRAL state government reporter Paul Specht. For his article on Thom Tillis, go to the NC Capital section of WRAL.com. I'm Jack Hagel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.